Well, folks, we're finally here. This is Ron with Aristo. And of course, we're in different continents. He's in Europe and I'm in North America. And the title today is Rats in a Maze, and he wanted me to put a question mark after it. So Aristo, go ahead.
Thank you. It was like weeks ago or months ago when I suggested this. I don't know. I've forgotten. But it's been a long time. And anything we say can and will be used against us in the court of public opinion, as well as the court of the internet and the court of data mining. Because that is why data is being mined. It's to be used against us. Why
and
else?
The fake court of law.
Yeah, well,
they're
no
all
law.
Fake courts of law, pretty much.
That's not, yeah. It's there's the law of convenience, minor law, that the system allows, and then there's the other kind that if your opposing party in the so-called law is the system itself, then the game is fixed. We know this, though. Your viewers must know this. And the question is, and has always been, what do we do about it? Once upon a time, it was like, why is it this way? Well, why is it? Is because psychopaths exist, and psychopaths will always go for power, and it's an ideology. I mean, some people have spirituality, religion, art, creativity, love, family. The psychopath has power. That is their God. And power for the psychopath is not empowerment. It is manipulation of anything that the psychopath considers not themselves. Everything and everyone, depending on the level of psychopathy. Now, psychopathy just means a pathology of the psyche or soul or mind or however you want to call it. But all through history, if you look at, there's for example, in Turkey, now they admit to these, the artifacts or archaeological findings from the last ice age, 12,000 years ago, 10,000 years ago. And it's a group, a construct, a megalithic construct, basically. And there are pictures of bird shamans, shamans that wore bird cloaks and skulls of goats with horns. So you have the whole devil image come out. In the book of Enoch, there was even a mention of, the angels of God wearing wings, feathered wings and horns and eyes like snakes. There's a certain passage in one of the apocryphal books of Enoch where he wakes up and sees the angel of the Lord, so to speak, with a multicolored wing cloak. And if I'm not mistaken, but in any case, these are shamans who got all of the surrounding peoples to build these megaliths so they would worship them. So somehow they got all kinds of human communities that they interacted, they had their customs, they had whatever levels of commerce or barter. But here you got them to basically haul giant rocks in order to build this thing for no apparent reason, but some ceremonial. So the theory is basically they were manipulating them. And over the years, over the centuries, over the millennium, the methods of manipulation technology has been honed. I mean, it is manipulation technology. It is social engineering technology. And it is as old as humanity, as old as civilization. In fact, I question if humans would have even had what we call civilization without psychopathy. They may have in some way started, or it might have gone slower, because humans are inherently lazy, in my opinion. They like to enjoy life. They like to enjoy, they don't want to work hours and stuff, long hours, for no other reason than to glorify somebody. And especially sacrifice themselves and all of that. Well, in our so it's not a conspiracy theory. It's basically human history. And then you look at the history of civilization, and it's the history of human domestication. Humans domesticate animals. Psychopaths domesticate all humans. So, that's where the rats in the maze comes from. But the thing is, in order for this domestication now to be efficient, I came across, there's these alternative types that occasionally have videos, and I think they're very sincere. It's called Truth Stream Media. I often post on Facebook from their videos. But essentially, I think it's a husband and wife team. One of them, they used to be on Alex Jones, but fell out. But in any case, I think they're sincere. And their thing is mind control. And they do research and make videos. And one of their videos was about Julian Huxley, a letter that Julian Huxley sent to George Orwell, or Eric Blair was his real name. And George Orwell was the protege of Julian Huxley. He was a student. And so he sent him a copy of his book, 1984, and Julian, who wrote Aldous Huxley. Julian Huxley was the mastermind. This is Aldous Huxley. And he wrote Brave New World. So Brave New World is a vision of the future where the elite basically re-engineer humanity into 5 different classes. And where they're at the top of the food chain, and then everybody else is genetically engineered inferior and like it. So
sounds like the caste system in India.
Well, worse, because this is more like an insect hive. Instead of having a queen bee, it's an oligarchy, where you have a circle of rulers or elites that get everything and have the high intelligence, the beauty, all of the perks, and everybody else is like progressively lower because they're useful that way. And so you essentially had a group of people in England, the Fabian socialists, who wanted to make tyranny efficient. The quest for power is natural in humanity, they said. So, everybody has to pull their weight, just like they say today. So if you're not, George Bernard Shaw was saying, well, sir, I saw a video, if you're not pulling your weight, if you're not producing more than you consume, I will execute you. We should be able to execute whoever doesn't produce more than they consume. Well, then execute the psychopaths, obviously, because they're in the negative values. But Aldous Huxley answered to Eric Blair. He said, George Orwell, this is a great book, this and that and the other, but I disagree with your vision. Your vision isn't practical because tyrannies that are by force, the boot in the face type of tyranny, that's just a fear tactic. That is temporary. You can't sustain it. It's unsustainable. There's always going to be a revolution no matter what. Humanity at some point is going to either rise up or the decadent dictators, so to speak, will make mistakes or, their power will degrade and somehow they will be either overthrown or the system will collapse. What we need is an efficient system that runs like clockwork, where people are happy to be slaves, just like happy domesticated animals, happy pets. Only a pet isn't a slave. It doesn't really do work for you. It's there for companionship or whatever. Maybe sheepdogs or guard dogs, but that's not quite the same. A cat, for example, cannot be put to work, but humans can and are. So in my opinion, this is my opinion now, we notice that since the Renaissance, the Industrial Revolution involved a very, very, a study, the transition of society from oppressing the masses to actually uplifting them in order for them to work and create technologies. And technologies and innovation cannot happen in slavery. You need to give people some freedom. You need to give them some leeway, but of course, a level of control. And this is going to be only for 200 years because more than this, obviously, or 300 years, however it was, more than this, people will get too educated, too creative. It will be ingrained and it'll be difficult to dumb them down again. So we're at a kind of razor's edge. The rats in the maze thing is basically to study us. So are we rats in the maze for real? Now, just because somebody poses that you're a rat in the maze doesn't mean you're a rat in the maze. Just because somebody calls you a slave doesn't mean you are a slave. You might be, but it depends on the inside. Somebody can be enslaved, but they might not be a slave. I've said this long ago before. So if you get into the habit of defining humanity in terms of we're crap, we deserve to die, like, there's some professor in California that came up, a philosophy professor that came out, and she's like some goth woman, but she came out. Humanity's crap and should be destroyed so we can resolve global warming. The only way global warming we can solve it is to destroy humanity. And so, of course, certain types who want to cull the population will want to encourage that. They'd love for people to just walk into the crematorium and do the job for them. And that's what they want. That's what turns them on. It's not just because resistance bothers them. They say, why should we, if we're like gods, we should be worshiped. We should be able to grab people's kids and sacrifice them publicly, and they'll thank us for it and love us for it and cry and how great we are. That's what they want. How do I know? Well, you need to be able to put yourself in their shoes. People say, no, I'm not a psychopath. I can't. Well, look, actors play the good guy all the time, and they're convincing. And they might be bastards or bitches or whatever. I mean, these
or
actors...
vice versa.
Or vice versa. They can play bad guys and they might be good people. So look, you can put yourself even in the shoes of psychopathy because we all have a psychopath within us. 90% of the population with a certain amount of stress and brainwashing will go psychopathic. That is what the system believes. But at least we have seen that normal people can exhibit symptoms of psychopathy. We see this in the internet cancel culture, gang ups, bullying, bullshit in the name of some ideology, but it's really the lust for power. The little person in their basement gets to join a group and have a good old witch hunt, and they get off of that. So, and we are being conditioned. Now, you often speak of the quote unquote deep state. I don't believe there's a deep state. There's basically, the web of intrigue and all of this and these so-called top of the food chain types. But the deep state myth, and I believe it's a myth, it's a good guy versus bad guy, white hat versus black hat. Now, we've had enough experience here with our videos and what you've been saying to know. Remember the days when Obama was the good guy playing a bad guy? When they said, oh, he's really, one of us. Now they're saying the same thing about Trump. They're going to say the same thing about Hillary. Why Hillary? Well, you got this Bernie Sanders guy who doesn't look like he's going to be living that many years, really, in my honest opinion.
Oh, he's 80 what? 86 or 7 or something like that?
Yeah, so what's the chance of this guy keeling over during his presidency if he becomes president? And then the vice president, who's probably going to be Mrs. Clinton, is going to be the new president. And that's where we're going to have our little myth. You need a bad guy, the representative of the deep state, which is Mrs. C, and you need a good guy, which is the representative of, whatever, the story, the myth that somehow, the drain the swamp zone.
And if you now that's Donald Trump.
Yes, that's him, And basically what we're doing as rats in the maze is what we're doing here. Now this video, I can't turn off any cookies. I can't turn off anything. My face is on YouTube. My voice is being recognized and I'm being data mined every time, I go public. If I surf the internet, I can somehow protect myself to a certain degree and, maybe my information will get shoved under this pile of other information. But if data mining is not there for marketing. The marketing is basically for us as the commodity, just like our birth certificate, like some have said, is a certificate of strawman ownership, or slave certificate or whatever. And that is also, in my honest opinion, kind of bogus because it doesn't matter when you have a system and there is no law and everybody's on the take or else completely subservient or fooled or compartmentalized or whatever, or else removed. And now you can discredit people publicly far easier than you need to remove them. Of course, this data mining goes against us. There was a video I saw. I'm not going to link it, I don't even remember, but some committee was talking about vaccines, for example. And they were saying people aren't really getting vaccinated like they should. What do we do? well, they're talking about it on these alternative sites and internet, and we have to shut them down. And somebody else said, no, no, that's the last thing we want to do. We get all our information from them. We know exactly what to do once they give us all of their ideas of what they're doing. I mean, imagine if the American Revolution was on the internet and all the royals of England watched the American Revolution, all the so-called founding fathers in their little groups conspiring to revolt, and sign the Constitution. There would be no revolution. So how can we go on the internet and pretend to actually so-called make a difference or express ideas when those who are data mining are getting that information? And they're getting tons of information, and there's too much information and compiling it. That's why they need artificial intelligence. Human beings cannot do this. And of course, there's flaws in that system. And so how do you discover the flaws in the program? You beta test it. You give it out to the public, and they play with it, and they express themselves, and they figure out what the mistakes are and say, look, it doesn't work this way. This game doesn't work like that. This program doesn't work like this. You need to fix this, that, and the other. We don't do that consciously, but we're actually doing it indirectly. We're telling them exactly what they need to do in order to efficiently turn us into worshipers of our own suffering. And and people are still doing that. And they're still talking about narratives that are given to them. Nobody's creating a narrative. Nobody's creating their own narrative. They're creating memes, which is just a little funny way of describing the narratives. But the narratives are more often than not promoted by the system itself. And you notice that there are some narratives that if you go against them, there's massive retaliation. Like the vaccine thing, for example. For example, there's stuff that I could say, and I'm not, why? What? Well, I've said enough. Go look at the old videos, if you really want to hear about advice. All I'm going to say now is that, why are you still listening to narratives and repeating them? Whatever happened to think outside the box? Which box are you thinking outside of? The matchbox? Of what they tell you is, the truth. It's not the truth. And but the only area, and this is natural for people where you do get people riled up and they do try to resist, is health. If you know that they're getting ready to kill you and your children, then you're obviously going to forget the cognitive dissonance to protect your family, your loved ones, yourself. But if it's just something abstract, like some political intrigue between parties, who cares? You have better things to do. You got the daily grind. You're kept busy. You're earning your keep. You're surviving, So of course you're in a system that will not let you do this. And maybe soon we'll have, like our friends in the Far East, have what they call a social credit score. You've heard about those. Where they basically on their cell phones, there's a number. And if you say anything against the system or do anything that's frowned upon by the system, they will decrease your number. And then you can't put your kids into a good school or even any school at all. And they even have announcements of this person is and done this and that. They'll out you publicly. Even as you cross the street, there's cameras now that will identify your face, and then a megaphone, some loudspeaker will say, there's the person who, didn't pay their debt, or transgressed here or did that or the other. And they have to obey this. There was one video I saw about some mixed martial artist, and this guy, he wanted to out people who were phony. They were doing Tai Chi, and all of this. And these people claim to be strong fighters. And this guy says, no, you're just doing light exercise. This is light exercise. You're listening to the government to brainwash you to move your body a certain way. And that makes you even more obedient. So he was 41 years old, way past his prime, and he beat them all. And so they lowered his social credit score. They shut down his dojo. They basically ruined the guy. He was in tears, and some Westerners picked it up and they shut down all of his internet connections and everything. because he was right. So they want this to come into the West, but it's going to be hard. You have to do things like dumbing down the population. 2020 to 2030 is the decade of transition into tyranny, into greater tyranny. So the rats in the maze, there's a reason for it. Why rats in the maze? Because, we're being scanned. We're being profiled, if you will. Now, this is all well known. I mean, a lot of people say that. So we're being profiled and, we're being spied upon to be profiled. So the data is statistical, more or less, unless you're somebody who is very outspoken and very popular. If you're outspoken and unpopular, well, it's only a matter of time before you lose your job and basically end up eating the wrong foods and being isolated. You were isolated, for example.
I'm way more isolated than I used to be.
Exactly. You used to be very popular, and to the point that people would come to you and try to recruit you for their own purposes. And once you couldn't be recruited, you were canceled. You were one of the first victims of cancel culture, in my opinion. Not completely canceled. They didn't have anything to say against you, but everybody turned against you.
But they knew how to limit me.
They limited you, and then you lost your house, and you then had the heart attack. Is all this coincidence? The house isn't a coincidence. I think that's tied together with a lot of things. The heart attack, I'm starting to question if the stress, it was well known that if they stress you and stress you and stress you, then your body's going to give out. So you were profiled, and they're trying to, I'm not an important person, whatever. Don't have a following or anything. So it doesn't matter that much. But maybe one day I'll want to become public, and they'll take all of this information and say, you're problematic. We don't, and if you want to do something like, do something on the internet or teach something or write something, or I don't know what, well, we're going to keep you from doing that. Unless it's material we can use. So it's that. So there is a reason to not be on the internet. There is a reason to not play the game and stay off the grid. Or you can play what they call 4D chess. 4D chess is a term I've used, I've heard of recently. 4D chess is, I guess, correct me if I'm wrong, when somebody, you're basically negotiating or manipulating, or you're being manipulated, and you do something that seems to be motivated by one thing or for one reason, and yet you have these hidden motives. So you're basically moving around in ways that your opponent cannot see, and so you get them on this from where they can't. Where they can't, you surprise them, sneak attacks, plans within plans, strategies within strategies, things like that, So in my opinion, it's a kind of quasi-psychopathic term because they like that kind of thing.
Well, I used to love chess, but the person who taught me how to play, after about a couple of weeks, maybe, I don't remember the exact amount of time, he couldn't beat me anymore because I knew how to do fool's mate and I knew how to camouflage it.
Yeah. So like that, but a chess is 2D, two-dimensional. It's on
right,
a board.
Exactly.
Now, if you had a board like they do in the TV show Star Trek, where they had one board and the board has a third dimension where there's layers. So you move the pieces like up here as well as on each board. That's 3D chess. So 4D chess is like a euphemism for hidden moves. So they say the orange man, Mr. T, is playing 4D chess, where he really wants to drain the swamp, but he's playing to this and caters to this like Obama used to. He's really a good guy, but he's playing strategic games with the bad guys. It's like, good guys don't do that. They don't get into those tactics. They never did. And I don't care how much you justify it. There's a whole other dynamic of them, and that's why many were martyrs. It doesn't work that way, in my honest opinion. That kind of compromise is playing the game on their so-called field. So, but in any case, and yet I still say, well, you got to play 4D chess if you want to stay online, which means you have to say things in a way that they either mistake out of context or in a different context, or, but that takes a lot. That takes a lot. And they're basically playing around to see, because if they wanted to shut everybody down, they would do it. If they wanted to kill everybody, they would do it. But there would be repercussions. If they wanted a tyranny, they would install a tyranny. Nobody would be able to do a thing. If the masses rise up against the technology that they have, they would put them down and make up a story in the media. And that's what they plan to do. No. Why would they want to do that when they can have the prize? And the prize is for us to worship them as gods and to be their playthings and to willingly decrease our population down to nothing, and the rest of us to be their, mutated as they will, and then they can just launch into the rest of the universe and destroy it or do whatever, because technology, we got weapons of war. We can destroy a country now. We can destroy a planet later. Then we'll be able to destroy a sun, a galaxy. They dream like that. That's the dreams they have. And so are we rats in the maze? Somebody's trying to see us that way. If somebody identifies you with a racial slur, are you that racial slur? If somebody calls you a name, are you that name? In a sense, why get pissed off about it? Let them call you whatever. Is it true? Eventually they'll get tired of it. Unless it is collectively reinforced through social engineering. Everything we know is from the media. So in conclusion, this is a rant. Ask yourselves, where did I get this information? Did I get this information from the media? Is this the media that's telling me this? Or is it a specific person that stands out? Or specific people that stand out, that have done research or have an opinion or whatever, whose motives are not the media's motives? I mean, are these people the media's motives? You hear all of these things about this virus that's going around. Who's giving that information? Is it the media? And people naturally, they will just talk as if it's true. So maybe your viewers know better. Don't talk as if the media is true. Think differently.
Most of the time.
Look, we still don't have chip implants, okay? So there's always hope if we don't have those chip implants. We still don't, and I don't think they can do that. That's later. That's where you actually submit, where the 666 goes into your body. It's not just a tattoo on your hand. So really, the thinking outside the box is something that needs to be re-examined. The rats in the maze is just a question you ask yourself. It's like, well, and similarly, is the world bad? Is the earth bad? Or are we just ill? Do you call a cancer patient a bad person? No, they're a diseased person. You don't even call people with mental illness bad people. Psychopathy is a little different. It's the closest you can get to evil, but it's really not evil as a state of being. It's a pathology it's an existential pathology, I would say, a pathology of the soul, and not of individual souls. It's the pathology of the soul, in my opinion. When the soul was created, it happened. This goes into metaphysics and all of that, and that's outside of the realm. So I'm going to end this rant with a hope that people revise the statement of all the derogatory terms of humanity and everything, not just the isms and the phobes and the moos and the mas and the mus, but basically every single derogatory statement that comes from the media and every single thing that the media says. If it's true, it's a half-truth, and it's only there for a reason, to manipulate you. So if you can think, you're not a rat in the maze. And if you can think outside of the box, then you're thinking outside of the maze. You're a human being shoved in a maze. So it doesn't matter if you get out or not. All you have to do is be true to yourself and take it from there, because we're in for some interesting times, but that doesn't mean things are hopeless. At the same time, I'm always one who believes more in faith than hope. Hope is passive. Hope can easily become opium. So abandon hope. Who cares? Keep the faith, though. You are who you are for a reason. So thanks again for listening. And thank you, Ron, for having me. I don't know how frequent these videos are going to be, but for now, all is well. So thanks.
Thank you,
Namaste.
Aristo.
Mhm.